What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. There's been a lot of discussion around the idea of a Nintendo Direct happening in July, but we're about halfway through the month now, so naturally people are getting a bit concerned. Well, we have a reliable source, I'd say, that at least is giving us an update here around the idea, and if Nintendo really would have an event this month, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony Santa Monica, and apparently this game that they've been working on that we thought might be a new IP. Well, turns out it might be something else, and we'll see what some of those possibilities are. And Square Enix, they've been revisiting a lot of their back catalog and older franchises here recently through remasters and remakes, and it appears they could have another big one scheduled here pretty soon, and in this case, for the Dragon Quest community. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Nintendo and their Switch 2 system, specifically when it comes to stock and availability of this console, especially as we head into a big release for them with Donkey Kong Bananza, that out in just a couple of days. In fact, we should see reviews going live, I guess, either today or tomorrow. Well, it does appear that Best Buy will have stock alongside of the game. This was an update over on their website, where they say with Donkey Kong Bonanza here on July 17th, Nintendo Switch 2 restock. This is in-store only, so it's very important to note that. And they say all Best Buy stores will have limited quantities in stock on July 17th. And I mean, this is, I know we just had Mario Kart World, but Donkey Kong Bonanza, I think a lot of people are looking at as like the big Switch 2 game, more single player oriented style, big adventure here. Whereas Mario Kart World, kind of that online multiplayer style game. And this is, to me, a game that really, I would say, showcases more of the power for the Switch 2 with some of the destruction elements that I just don't really think the Switch 1 was going to handle well, if at all. So it looks like, at least for now, Best Buy should have some stock, but you're definitely going to check in at your local Best Buy to see exactly how much. Also, with Microsoft making the full-on push now to multi-platform releases, we are seeing some sales figures get out there that, well, kind of backs up this strategy for Microsoft. This, you can see as an example, was posted by Push Square, and this stat comes from ex-Turn 10 game and level designer Harrison Bolin, which we know Turn 10 lost, half the staff there, it seemed. So yes, there's many people right now updating their resume, and in fact, that's how we found out that Forza Horizon 5 sold 2 million units in 1 month on the PS5 alone. Naturally, they're trying to build up kind of their resume here, and noting that you had a game with Forza Horizon 5 selling that many copies in 1 month is impressive just on the PS5. And then also it really shows that Microsoft, yeah, they're finding a lot of money just off of the Xbox platform. 2 million copies in 1 month for a game that's years old at that point with Forza Horizon 5. I mean, even when you take the 30% cut and hand it to Sony, you're still near, well, you're $80 to $100 million. It depended also on the early access version. That was even more money. So yeah, essentially Microsoft finding a bunch of extra cash just on PlayStation. And soon, I would say, with the Switch 2, but we'll get to that in a bit. Oh, and it does look like next month we'll be seeing Call of Duty Black Ops 7 with its gameplay debut. This, we can see, was posted by Jeff Keighley on his account, saying Call of Duty Black Ops 7 worldwide reveal at Opening Night Live kicks off Gamescom in a massive way, Tuesday, August 19th. That'll be streaming live everywhere, 2 p.m. Eastern. The takeaway I have from this is, oh wow, we're almost a month away from Gamescom. I mean, look, we just had Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Here comes Black Ops 7. It's just, I don't know, expected. It's honestly kind of a boring release for Call of Duty. And I know Call of Duty in general, it has become very stale, I think, for a lot of people, because you expect it every single year, but this is just a little extra. Being like, oh yeah, we just had Black Ops 6. Here's Black Ops 7. At least before, you would have them jump around in different time periods, different developers. I mean, this is as straightforward as it gets, but hey, I guess we'll find out next month some of the gameplay that they debut. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this Nintendo Direct that's been floating around in the conversation for the past couple of weeks now. And the idea being that there would be some sort of event from Nintendo in the month of July. But as I mentioned, we're halfway through the month, so we're kind of getting down to the wire now for exactly when Nintendo would be able to even have this event with other things that are currently going on. Well, we did have Nate the Hate give us an update here. I'd say it's been pretty reliable in the past, even telling us about how there was going to be like a shadow drop for a reveal trailer on Nintendo's next system that no one believed until it did happen that day. So he obviously one to pay attention to here when he does speak on these things. And in this case, he did at least give us a rough estimate, I'd say, or at least a window of time for when a direct would be happening. But it does appear to be happening in July. Now, there's still a lot of details we have to exactly confirm here as we get, I guess, closer to this event, we'll say, happening. But this was shared, we can see, in his video that he has posted on his channel, naturally to be down below in the sources if you'd like to listen further. It's about an hour long, but it's titled, Where are the Games and When Will They Be Revealed? Here's what we know. Oh, and it features MVG. So there you go. You can hear Nate and MVG kind of discuss and go over some of the stuff coming up from Nintendo. But essentially, Nate did share that there is a Nintendo Direct, according to his sources of knowledge, that will take place in July after Donkey Kong Bonanza is out, which, well, it kind of throws out this week, obviously, as Nintendo is focusing in on a big release for their new Switch 2 system. Here's the thing, though. After that, we're really not sure when the Direct is exactly going to happen. We're not even really sure what type of Direct it is. So that means it could happen in, I guess then the last 2 weeks of this month. And, well, next week we have a Pokemon Presents. So I guess it could be in that same week. But to me, if I had to take a guess, it probably would be the last week of the month ahead of all their investor stuff that should be happening to kick off August. So with the Direct in mind, what kind of Direct is it going to be? Because there's general partner, Indie World. It could be a game like specific Direct. They could just do a Direct just for Metroid Prime 4. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen. And I also don't believe it'd be an Indie World because, well, there's a lot more to this than just Nintendo themselves with their first-party games. So we know they have Metroid Prime 4. That needs a release date. Zelda Age of Imprisonment needs a release date. And Kirby Air Riders, all right? We already have a release date for Drag X Drive. That's happening next month in August. But for those big 3 titles for them that are very important, alongside of Pokemon Legends ZA, they have to at least start communicating when these things are coming out. Now, they can do that through the Nintendo Today app that throws a bit of a wrench into the plans and predictions here for how all this is going to go down. But on top of that, third-party games. It seems like they're being held back. Nate also commented on this, on really this that's happening right now with these third-party games that you notice. There's not a lot of Switch 2 logos out there when games get revealed, and it does seem like Nintendo wants to kind of throw these into their own event so that the Switch naturally is looked at as like this very special event, special release. So like take Borderlands 4, that has a Switch 2 version. They've already communicated this, but we don't have a release date for it. Final Fantasy VII Remake, same deal. We don't have a release date. Elden Ring. Again, kind of the list goes on with some of these third-party games. And then you bring Microsoft into the mix, who's talked openly about how they would like to put stuff on the Switch too. And we already know they've signed a deal with Nintendo for Call of Duty that we figured would start as soon as this holiday. So when I put all that together, I assume it's a general Direct. But it very well could be a partner Direct, and Nintendo just allows third parties to have like one big event with Nintendo branding on it to showcase their Switch 2 games, and then Nintendo just really dates things through that Nintendo Today app. If you think about it, if they did a Metroid Prime 4 release date that I hope that's the next game up, but outside of course, Drag X Drive, I hope that's the next big game that's up for Nintendo. But something tells me it might be like Kirby Air Riders, and Metroid Prime 4 falls into November, and I say that in that way because that means that since they announced it, that would be nearly 8.5 years. We've almost waited a decade for this game, okay? So I'd rather have it sooner, like, hey, September? But I guess we'll see when they have their event or push it out the Nintendo Today application. But for me, if I had to take a guess, final week of July, and it being a general Direct that's the typical 40 minutes or so with 30 some odd games being revealed. So it should be interesting nonetheless, but I guess anything is possible currently. It's just kind of what I'm sitting there thinking right now. Alongside of that, Pokemon Presents next week. Seems like we have quite a bit of stuff at least lining up for Nintendo here to close out July. Next up, let's talk about Sony Santa Monica, because we sort of figured they were working on a new intellectual property, as it was sort of rumored and discussed for quite some time now. And on top of that, it seemed like the idea is it might lean into sci-fi. So with Cory Barlog apparently heading this project, okay, it sounds like it'd be really cool to see something brand new, leaning more into the far future, or I guess space is obviously a big thing for video games and has been more and more recently in some of these shows, but nonetheless, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. However, we have a bit of a curveball that's been thrown here. Now, this we can see over on Reset Era from Jason Shreier. Says Cory Barlog's game is Sony Santa Monica's next big thing. Last time I spoke to anyone about it, a month or two ago, it was going well. Okay, sounds pretty straightforward. Great, new IP, maybe sci-fi. And then he comes back to the table here and says, why does everyone think Barlog's game is a new IP? And that sent that thread going crazy over on Reset Era because, well, now what is it? So we start to think of Sony Santa Monica. We go, well, they're basically the God of War studio. So you go, is it another God of War game? Is that Atreus spin-off game that has been kind of discussed as a possibility? And when you play through God of War, that does line up and make sense. Is it maybe something prequel related? Like there are some things they can do here, sticking with God of War, but not being Kratos, as an example, as the main character for the game, but it does also make you go, okay, well, how would God of War necessarily do in the mainstream without Kratos for like front and center? Great question. Now, there have been some who are wondering, wait a minute, does that mean that they could be borrowing an intellectual property franchise that Sony has put in the vault for some time? I guess that's possible. And my favorite one is people are like, oh, you know what other game Sony Santa Monica worked on back in the day in like the early 2000s? Kinetica. Yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to do a reboot for Kinetica. Actually, that would be kind of interesting because I don't think it would just be a pure racing game. It sort of feels like they might lean into maybe that world, that racing world, but being more of like an action adventure twist on it too. So at least that would be unique and different and interesting to see how they would accomplish that. But I guess if it's just an IP that we're already familiar with, not a new one, yeah, some kind of God of War spinoff would make sense. And I'm curious how people would feel about that because look, God of War sells well, very popular, but it's also like what we expect from Sony Santa Monica, so it'd be interesting to see them maybe do something a little different here and there alongside of the really big God of War games that we expect at this point from them. So hey, I guess we'll find out soonish because it seems like this is a game that's been in development for quite some time under Cory Barlog, so maybe it's something they can close out the year with at a state of play. Or, I mean, PlayStation Experience would be awesome, but at this point, does anyone really think Sony is interested in even running those now? Because that feels like something you run to start a generation, so maybe the PlayStation 6. But either way, state of play that reveals it would be cool, and even if it's a God of War spinoff, I'm just curious to see what Cory can come up with here. Next up, let's talk about an apparent remake that's in development right now at Square Enix and should be pretty exciting for the Dragon Quest community here. Let's take a look. This posted up. This is by MP First, who says they've learned that Square Enix is currently developing a remake of Dragon Quest VII Fragments of the Forgotten Past, the beloved 2000 classic originally released for the first PlayStation. This information comes from internal documents we've seen that outline several upcoming projects tied to the publisher's top franchises, all scheduled for this fiscal year or early next year. It's worth noting that Square Enix's fiscal year that we're currently in would be ending March 2026, like March 31st, 2026, which then early next year could also be, okay, the next fiscal year, but it ends up coming out before, say, June, so first half next year. Either way, they do say that the key word here is remake, and that's exactly how it's labeled internally. This distinction is crucial, as Square Enix has previously referred to other updated Dragon Quest titles, such as Dragon Quest 3, 4, and the upcoming 1 and 2 as HD remakes. The explicit use of the term remake strongly suggests a more ambitious reimagining of Dragon Quest VII than a simple graphical upgrade. Well, if you went back to the PlayStation 1 version, Dragon Warrior 7, I mean, it'd be interesting just to see them maybe do some touch-ups for it and stuff, but I feel like there is room to really go all in on something like a Dragon Quest VII, especially if you play it on 3DS. It was a very, very good title there. Has the quirkiness of being adapted to a dual screen technically with the 3DS, so I could see them go, hey, you know what, let's do a full remake here for this game. And Dragon Quest is a series that's just gotten more and more popular as we've gone along, so it's not even a huge risk to do this for Square at this time. Even looking at something like Dragon Quest III HD 2D, that sold very well for them. So yeah, this makes a ton of sense, and I'm actually really excited for the idea of this, because out of all the different Dragon Quest games, Dragon Warrior games, 7 is one that is popular, but it was never really one that I really got into back in the day. And I mean, I played through it on the 3DS after it had come out, and now it's one of the more expensive rare titles on the platform. So I think it'd be really cool to be able to go back through it here in this reimagined sense, I guess, just on modern platforms from Square Enix, and I think it would do very well there. So here's hoping this is something that is set up for this fiscal year, maybe even this holiday, and at the latest, I guess, first half of next year. So we'll have to keep an eye out for Square Enix, see if they have any surprises for Dragon Quest fans here soon. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about those ROG Ally Xbox handhelds that have been revealed, but we don't have pricing and we don't have release dates for them, at least until the other day, when it seemed that pricing details got out there through way of, it looked like Google had been scraping websites, and they just went ahead and threw up the 2 listings for the different SKUs. So we can see this was posted over on 3D Juegos. Say the cheapest version, the ROG Ally, will cost €599. So remember, there's the white and then the black model, while the ROG Ally or Xbox Ally X will go on sale for €899. That's the black handheld from ROG and Xbox here. So people are naturally doing the conversion rates over, and they're finding that the most expensive one would be like $1,050. All right. That is quite expensive. And you know what? When I was looking at it before, I figured it would probably be $999, basically like $1,000. The thing with that is, typically when we see these prices listed, say, in euros, it doesn't necessarily line up in terms of exchange rates. You may have it just come out as $900, just outright in the US. Now, we know that the tariff stuff comes up and is discussed a lot, and that affects pricing. So who knows what exactly they're going to say if it is $1,000. I mean, hey, it's $1,000 and it's just the economic conditions or whatever they need to say, sure. But I am still kind of in the sense that, all right, it might be $900 or 900 euros there, but it's just $1,000 or $999 here. And to me, that's a very expensive handheld, and it's gonna be very hard to sell that to most people. Even the cheapest one there, if it's $700 or even $600, still a difficult sell for people with that. Even if it is, okay, the OS is more streamlined and it's set up more so for these handhelds, well, the ROG Ally and the ROG Ally X and stuff that will probably even get cheaper after these at least break onto the scene, those are apparently getting the same kind of update. So there are other paths you can go rather than for like this most expensive tier. But just in general, pricing right now around these devices is just getting more and more expensive, and it's just more and more difficult of a sell to the mainstream. So again, I mentioned before, the Switch 2 at $450, of course being touted as incredibly expensive, I think just standing still over the next 4 or 5 years will end up looking cheaper and cheaper as we go along, because it wouldn't shock me if, say, the PlayStation 6 was $800. I think in 5 years, we're gonna look back and be like, oh, okay, that Switch 2 at $450, it's not bad. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, what month do you think Metroid Prime 4 is releasing in? November, okay. Yeah. I think it's just because we're realizing we're almost into August, and you figure Nintendo wants some kind of marketing push for that. I think this is a game, Metroid Prime 4, that should just have its own direct in general. You know, like, let's just really dive into this game, show it off, give that final big push to this big 3D Metroid game. So in that sense, November, yeah, for holiday season stuff, I get it. It'd be like almost your flagship title then, technically. But I would love to see it in September. I just want it sooner rather than later. I'm already sold in the game. I'm picking it up. So if I can get it 2 months earlier than this poll is expecting, yes, so I will vote for September. August to me just seems out of the question, because August is like 2 weeks away. So even then, if they got to the end of July and they announced it, I don't think they're going to tell you, hey, the game's out in 2 weeks. No, because you feel like they want to do Metroid Prime 2 and 3 as well. But then in that case, yeah, it probably is November. So great. 8.5 years, almost a decade to get a Metroid Prime 4 after they announced it back in 2017. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from News. Says a big factor in the stop killing games argument is ambiguous value when purchasing games now. You have no idea how long a game you purchase will be playable online, and even when publishers promise X many years of content and support, they often break that if it doesn't do well enough. Yeah, sometimes you're just kind of gambling on some of these live service games. Remember Babylon's Fall? It didn't last long at all. Square Enix was out of there. They were, oh, that's it, we're done. And that you're right in the sense that if they're going to launch a game and they have X amount of support that they are quote unquote promising or a roadmap in place, to me, that does seem like we're selling this to you with that in mind. And if we break it, unless there's some crazy circumstances where the whole studio and publisher goes under and they can't provide support anyway, it's like, well, what are you going to do there? But if they have this sold to you with this idea, to me, they have to hold up their end of the bargain. And a lot of times we're not seeing that happen here. So maybe they just put an expiration date on a game when you buy it, and you do have it put in front of you like, hey, you're not buying this game. You are indeed buying a timed license. And I do think then that conversation will come up of, wow, we really don't own these games. And that's just something I don't think any of these publishers want to have to confront. So that's one of the reasons they're pushing back so heavily on this. It in no way benefits them, and in fact will just end up costing them more and more as they go along. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here on a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear more about some of our thoughts, as I did a podcast with a few other creators on the Switch 2 after a month. I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.